Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome. For our next face-to-face, today I have with me our guest, Professor Arun Kumar, who is a noted economist of India. Professor Kumar has written several books, including Black Economy and A Ground is Scorching Text, which is on a GST. Professor Kumar is a retired professor from JNU. He was the president of JNU Teachers Association, and he has also authored alternative budgets for the year 1993-94 and also for 1994-95. Today, I'm going to discuss with him on the different aspects of the budget, the budgetary allocation for the social sector, and has the budget addressed the internal and external challenges that India is facing right now, and also how it has addressed the aspiration of the minority, weaker section, and marginalized community. Welcome, sir, to our next episode of Face to Face.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to know about your impression on the budget and how do you think it has addressed the internal and external challenges India is facing right now, and is the budget you think is on the expected lines?
So, let us look at what the budget does. A budget looks at what are the problems in the current year and then tries to see how they can be resolved in the coming year, because the budget is always about the next year. So it's based on the current year's data and then projection for the next year. So if you see what is it that we have been facing in the Indian economy, we've been facing problem of unemployment, problem of slowing growth, growing inequality, challenges in agriculture, and various other such things. And these are interlinked because when demand is short, then the growth rate comes down. And when the growth rate comes down, the unemployment rises. And especially because technology is advancing, and this advancing technology means that fewer jobs are created. Like, say, in agriculture, as more and more tractors, harvester combines, threshers are used, less and less of employment is generated there. So in spite of growth, you may have less employment. So the nature of growth is also important. And then it is very important to see how the distribution is taking place, whether the profit earners are earning more or the wage earners are earning more. And the economic survey has already flagged the issue that while profits of the corporate sector have risen very high in the last 4 or 5 years, the real wages of workers have gone down, except for some categories. But for most categories, they have come down. So this is the challenge, that if wages are not going up and profits are going up, then demand will be short. So therefore, we needed to sort this out. Now, added to that has been the problem that since President Trump has come, there's a challenge from abroad, and the rupee has been weakening, the stock market has been declining, and these are posing fresh challenges because our imports have risen, but exports are not rising so much. So our foreign exchange reserves are also going down. And as the rupee weakens, the rate of inflation goes up. So apart from the inflation going up within India because of food prices, because of energy prices, there's also imported inflation because the rupee is weakening. So these are a lot of macroeconomic challenges that need to be dealt with. Now, the external challenges are difficult to deal with and control from here in India. So we cannot do much except try to strengthen the internal economy. If we can strengthen the internal economy, at least some of the challenges will be less. So we have to generate more employment. We have to try and control the prices of food and energy within the economy. We have to try and see how inequalities can be reduced, because inequality lead to demand shortage. So these are some of the challenges, internal and external. As you mentioned, that these are something that facing. Now, the budget, first thing is it should give a stimulus to the economy. So the stimulus will come if the size of the budget as compared to GDP goes up. Because the larger the size of the budget as compared to GDP, the more the demand will be generated in the economy, what is called the balanced budget multiplier. So what we see is that as a percentage of the GDP, the size of budget has been decreasing for the last few years. And this year also, the GDP is expected to grow by 10.1% according to the budget, but the expenditure in the economy will be increasing only by 7.4%. So therefore, the size in relationship to the GDP will decline. The second stimulus comes from the primary deficit. It's not just the fiscal deficit, but the primary deficit. So when you have the primary deficit, it means how much extra demand over and above, what will be generated by the economy, how much will the government help to generate demand. And the primary deficit is also coming down by 0.9%. So these two features imply that actually, the stimulus from the macroeconomic side will be weak. Now, the second aspect of this is that we have to generate employment, as I was saying. So to generate employment, we have to invest in the employment generating sectors. But unfortunately, what the budget is showing is that it's trying to invest more in the capital intensive sectors, which will generate very little employment, and reducing the size of those which are the employment generating sectors. So, like for instance, where would employment be generated? It would be generated in agriculture and allied activities, because we know that agriculture employs 46% of the workforce. So, if we put more money into agriculture, maybe some stimulus would be given there. Then in the rural area, because 65% of the population is still in the rural areas, so we need to put more money in there. So the rural areas, more demand is generated, but that is also being curtailed in real terms. Then education and health are big employment generators. There also we find in real terms the expenditures are not going up. Then, rural employment guarantee scheme, again, 86,000 crores was allotted last time, and again, 86,000 crores. That means in real terms, it is declining by the rate of inflation of, say, 5%. So all these sectors where actually employment generation could have been done so that people have more purchasing power in their hand, they can put more money into the market and thereby boost the economy. All those have been curtailed, while increase has been in the capital intensive sectors like the railway freight corridor, the highways, the IT sector, the power sector, and such like. Now we know that highways earlier was very non mechanical, they were labor intensive. But nowadays you see big cranes and big bulldozers, etc., working, and only 10 people are working, whereas earlier hundreds of people would get work. Similarly, on the railway track construction, earlier you'd see hundreds of people, but now with big machines, etc., you see only 10, 20 people working. So these areas also where the government is increasing investment, these are actually capital intensive, not labor intensive. Similarly, the power sector, the IT sector, where the government is trying to push its investment, those are also more capital intensive than labor intensive. So the problem is that because the government is not raising more revenue, and it is pushing toward the capital intensive sector side, and it is trying to curtail the fiscal deficit. So there are three things together. That's why they're forced to keep the investment in the labor intensive sectors down. This shows the priority of the government is incorrect. The priority of the government is what are called supply side economics. So as opposed to demand side economics, it is going for supply side economics. Now, what is supply side economics? Supply side economics does not mean we are going to increase supply. It means we are going to give concession to business. And through the giving the concession to business, we'll expect that the business will invest more. And when the business invests more, the investment will go up and then the economy will do better. But the problem is the business will not invest more unless demand is there. And that the RBI data for the organized sector is that our capacity utilization of organized sector has been hovering between 70 and 75 for the last many years. So unless that goes to 85, 90, they are not going to invest more. And that's why our finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, has been repeatedly saying that government is doing its own bit. It is increasing the capital investment, but the private sector is not coming forward to invest more. And the reason very simply is, and private sector has repeatedly said, CII, FICCI, and SOCM have said that the demand is short and we need more demand. Then we'll be able to invest more. So that stands to logic. So the government's aim should have been that it should have created more employment generation in the economy at the lower levels, and thereby give income in the hand of people, and that income would be spent, and then the demand would be there. But if you only do pro-business policies, you do supply side economics, then you are not giving attention to the demand side. You're not giving attention to the labor intensive sector, like I said, education, health, agriculture, rural development, and things like that. So the government strategy is incorrect. And therefore, I have been arguing that government strategy is what I call the twin strategy. The twin strategy is to help the conglomerates, the big business, like Tatas, Ambanis, Adanis, and so on. And they are being allowed to acquire assets, become much bigger, and so on. And 80 crore you keep poor. and you keep giving them something at the time of election to get the vote. So you get money from the conglomerates and you keep these people poor and get their vote. So this twin strategy is a part of the political strategy of the government of India, whereby it's marginalizing the unorganized sector, which employs 94%, and helping the organized sector to grow. So this is where I feel that the strategy of the government of India is incorrect, because outside also we are not going to get help. We are going to lose out there as the rupee weakens, as less of investment comes in, less of exports take place. So externally we don't expect much help for the increasing the rate of growth, and internally also we are not going to have it. So it's not a good strategy that the government has been adopting for the last many years, since the time of demonetization, since when it has been marginalizing the unorganized sector, and that strategy is continuing. And you could see that even during the pandemic, the Atmanirbhar Bharat package of 22 lakh crore was geared toward the organized sector, not the unorganized sector. So the help to the unorganized sector out of 22 lakh crore was only 3 lakh crore. The rest of it was going towards the organized sector. So this strategy of the government of India has to change, especially given the external problems that we are running into. Unless this is changed, we will not be able to take care of the problems that the Indian economy faces.
Can we make a comparison from the last budget to the present budget on the allocation of education and healthcare? And has the government this time taken care of the educational and other demands, social sector?
See, we cannot say taken care of. See, what does taken care of mean? Means we are solving the problem, but no 1 year will solve the problem. Because the problem is acute. As in education sector, you know that the ACER reports have been coming, annual status of education report. And since 2005, they're showing that large number of children in rural schools cannot read second-class textbook, cannot do second-class writing. So this problem is not going to go away in 1 year. So we cannot say because last year the allocation was this much and this year it's 1 or 2% more, therefore the problem is taken care of. No. Problem will be taken care of only if we spend in the coming years 10-20% more every year. Whereas what is happening is that in real terms, the allocations to education and health are not going up, and especially, the trick that they play is that they will allot some money. And then in the revised estimate, you find that the money has been not completely spent, only partially spent. And then in the actual, you find it even less was spent. And nobody remembers what was allocated 2 years back and what was allocated 1 year back, and therefore compare it. Only experts look at it. But the public should know that the government is playing games. It will show a higher allocation, then not spend the entire amount, and then you find that the allocation is inadequate. That's one. Second is that because of the black economy generation, whatever is spent is not properly spent. A lot of money is eaten up, so its effectiveness becomes less. As Chidambaram in his 2005 budget said, that expenditures don't lead to outcome. So even when you are spending it, a part of it is eaten away. And therefore the problem is. And this black economy problem is that our tax resources become short. Because the black economy means that people who are generating those black incomes are not paying the taxes they should be paying. So therefore, government always says we are short of resources. But actually, the shortage is not of resources in the economy. Shortage is that the government is not able to mobilize it because the black income generation is very strong in India. Right. So our problem of education, problem of health have continued. And problem of health, we saw during the pandemic, how people are dying outside the hospital, or they could not get ambulance, could not get oxygen, etc. So our health infrastructure is very weak, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities. But even in the metros like Bombay and Delhi, you saw people are dying outside the hospital. They were not able to get oxygen, etc. So even in metro cities where the infrastructure is better, the problem was acute. And much worse in tier 2, tier 3 city and the rural areas. So we need to strengthen our infrastructure and health sector, but we are not spending that kind of money. Okay, in real terms, sometimes these expenditures are falling. That means we are not giving adequate priority to these areas, whereas we need to give a high priority to these areas.
So, do you think it has addressed unemployment and job creation issues as adequately as it was required?
No, so again, I would say unemployment problem has been growing. It cannot be addressed in 1 year, right? It has to be showing the direction that we are moving in the correct direction. So in our unemployment report that we produced in 2022, and I was the chairman of a committee that was set up by the civil society groups, right? We showed that 320 million Indians have some proper work, but 280 million people do not have proper work because they are underemployed, they're disguised unemployed, or they have given up looking for work, or they are unemployed. So there are four different kinds, right? And 280 million. And every year, 27 million young people come into the job market. Okay. Either they come after age of 15, or they come after doing inter, or they come after doing BA, and or after MA. So if you add up all that, then it's 27 million in 2022. Now, 27 million, you can leave out 25% women who get married or have children and cannot work. So that still leaves 24 million. Now, the government is only talking about 5 million jobs. So we have a backlog of 20 million, plus every year we need 24 million jobs. And the government is only talking about 5, 7 million jobs. So whereas we need to generate 50 million jobs every year, right? Now, for that, we have to give emphasis to the labor intensive areas. And as I said, the labor intensive areas can be rural employment guarantee scheme, agriculture, it can be rural development, the rural infrastructure is very weak. We need to spend a lot of money there. Education will take a lot of employment. Health will take a lot of employment. Given the ACER report, it shows that our education is in very bad state. And during the pandemic, we saw health is in very bad state. So we can give a lot of employment to educated unemployed people in all these areas. But these are the areas where the government cuts. And therefore, the problem will get more aggravated over a period of time rather than solve the problem.
Has the budget addressed the issue of minorities and Muslims?
See, the problem is that the minorities are the poor, okay, in the country. They are part of the unorganized sector, right? Unorganized sector has been marginalized by the government, okay? Therefore, Muslims and minorities and SC and ST get marginalized when the unorganized sector is marginalized. If there was buoyant job creation, then there'd be more and more jobs created for everybody. But if job creation is very weak, and if jobs are being shed, then the minorities will suffer, the Muslims will suffer, the SC and ST will suffer. So even though government says that we have a SC/ST package, the government says we have a gender package, etc., right? But the point is that none of these segments are going to benefit because unless you boost the unorganized sector, and if you don't boost the unorganized sector, then even the organized sector suffers. Why is it that the organized sector wages are falling? They are falling because the labor is weak in the country. Because if you lose your job in the organized sector, you become unemployed and you fall into the unorganized sector. So the labor is not able to demand higher wages. That's why profit share is rising and the wage share is falling in the economy. And when the wage share falls, I say that the unorganized sector, like the reserve army of labor, okay, what Marx and so on called the reserve army of labor, which keeps the overall labor situation very weak. And when labor situation is very weak, all minorities will suffer. SC, ST will suffer, Muslims will suffer, etc. So therefore, in a sense, unless the government changes strategy and talks about unorganized sector, talks about employment generation, things will be bad. Now, if you look at it, what is the government doing? The data for the unorganized sector is very faulty. We are proxying the unorganized sector by the organized sector. Okay, the unorganized sector has been declining since the demonetization because it was hit very hard. Then GST hit it, then the NBFC crisis hit it, then the pandemic hit it. And yet the government says the economy is growing at 6%, 7%. If the unorganized sector is growing at 6%, 7%, there'll be a lot of employment generation. So why is it that the unemployment situation is becoming worse? Because the unorganized sector is declining. That is where the 94% of the employment is. So if this chunk is declining, then unorganized sector is declining means unemployment will increase. So it cannot be 6, 7%. Therefore, my argument is that the economy, this 6, 7% is the growth of the organized sector, whereas the unorganized sector is declining is at least 5%. So the real growth of the economy is only 1 or 2%. And that's why all these problems are coming. So what I argue is that the unorganized sector is being marginalized and it is invisibilized because it's not in the data and therefore it's not in the policy also. So government is not making the special provisions that are required by minorities, by Muslims, by the SCs and the STs. So it's invisibilized them. So I say that the organized sector has colonized the unorganized sector because the organized sector is growing at the expense of the unorganized sector.
On that note, let us hope that the budget is implemented effectively and it reaches the last man in queue. Thank you, sir, for sharing your perspective. We'll be back next week with another expert to discuss on another important issue. Be positive. Take good care of yourself. Goodbye. Thank you.